or I'll tell Gantu that you were staring at me." She felt a twinge of guilt as fear shone in Millen's eyes. He shuffled along the bench towards her. "So," she said, waving a hand at the arena. "What's next?" "It's the, executions," he mumbled. "And then the team has their practice session after that." "And those seats opposite us," she said. "Is that where the gods usually sit?" "Yeah." "Will they be coming today, do you think?" Millen shrugged. "Maybe. They always show up for the big matches, but on practice days like today, then normally only Lady Felice bothers to attend." "Felice?" "Yeah. She's the patron of the Blue Thumbs. They're her team." Sable sniggered. "What's so funny?" She thought better of telling him that she found the names of the 3 teams of Aila, Tantor ridiculous, as the locals took the whole competition so seriously. "Nothing," she said, raising a hand to shield her eyes from the harsh sunlight as she glanced around the arena. "When does the free food arrive?" Millen lifted his eyes to her. "I can buy you some if you're hungry." She smirked. "Are you trying to avoid me?" "No," he said, his voice a little strained. "It's just, my cousin Gantu can get a bit possessive." Sable turned her eyes to glance over at where Gantu was sitting, his cronies surrounding him as he spoke to a small group of terrified-looking men. There was no doubt that the man was a brute, but he had already proved his usefulness to her, providing her with not only food and somewhere to stay in the city, but also with the level of protection that her association with him entailed. Not that she needed protecting. She was perfectly capable of looking after herself, but no one bothered her, their fear of Gantu enough to keep all straying hands and glances away from her. The crowd's attention turned back to the sands of the arena as a gate opened. Armoured warriors emerged, leading a long line of ragged and shackled prisoners out of the shadows of the underground tunnels that ran under the arena. "The condemned?" she said. Millen nodded. "Yes. Today's batch of executions." Sable's eyes narrowed as she watched the prisoners be escorted out into the middle of the arena. The attention of the entire crowd was on them, and a hushed excitement percolated over the stone benches. The condemned were a mixture of the young and the old, men and women, all dressed in rags and covered in red wheals and stripes from the whips held by the armoured guards. Sable hardened her heart. She had a job to do, and the suffering of the people inhabiting the festering city of Aila Tanton was none of her concern. The prisoners were led to a long line of upright posts that ran down the middle of the arena, and the guards secured their chains, one captive to each stout pole. 2 of the prisoners had a green tinge to their skin, and Sable realized that they must be Fordians, a people who made up 1/3 of the population of the city, and who were the greatest rivals of the Blue Thumbs. "I thought the Fordians had their own arena," she said. "They do," said Millen. "But any caught breaking the law in our part of the city are executed here in the central pits. And, obviously, they're not allowed to compete in the qualifiers. There's no way any of them would be allowed to join the Blue Thumbs, just like they would never let any of our folk into their team, the Deadskins." The armoured guards pulled back as soon as the last prisoner had been secured to a post, and they filed out of the arena through a gate that closed behind them. The crowd stilled, their gazes on the sand. Sable frowned. "What happens to them now?" A large iron gate in the arena wall began to open before Millen could respond, and an ear-splitting shriek rose into the air. A beast emerged from the opening as soon as the gate was lifted, and Sable suppressed a cry as she stared down at it. It had a large, almost rounded back of thick, dark green skin, and each of its long forelimbs ended in a set of vicious-looking claws. Its back legs were scrabbling against the sand beneath it in its haste to reach the prisoners, but a thick chain around its ankle was keeping it back. It slashed out with its claws as its large jaws clacked open and closed, its teeth glinting in the strong sunlight. The prisoners cried out from the posts where they had been secured, but there was no escape, no matter how much they writhed and struggled as the beast slowly approached. "A greenhide," said Millen. "That's what happens to them." The crowd whooped and cheered as a long section of the beast's chain was loosened, and the monster charged forwards, its shriek echoing off the round walls of the arena. It reached the line of posts in seconds, and Sable glanced away as its claws tore through the first prisoner.